Hi everyone. I've been getting a few questions about the project for this week, the module assignment. So I thought I would just spend a couple minutes going over my thought process, and hopefully you'll find this to be helpful. So taking a trip down memory lane so far for the large innovative project that you have as your kind of final assignment in this class, we've done a couple of things. First, we spent several weeks looking at what is the problem, and I've asked you to be very focused about the nature of the problem. So rather than saying teacher evaluation is an issue, what is it about teacher evaluation? Is it that folks aren't using it in terms of a learning tool and actually changing their teaching as a result of it? Is the problem that it's not accurately capturing what teachers are doing right now, etc.? Whatever your problem is, then you would be identifying your solution. So the problem should have kind of came out of the empathy interviews and exploring the research. If you're still not focused on the problem, it's going to be hard to keep moving forward. So make sure you shoot me an email and we can find a time to connect on the phone to make sure you have a clear problem identified. You should be able to succinctly state it in 1 or 2 sentences for the problem. The next thing that you worked on last week was identifying an innovative solution to that problem. So, for instance, if you had a teacher evaluation problem that was about not faculty and teachers not learning from it, then your solution would be more focused on, maybe adding a component to the current evaluation tool that's more learning focused, or providing more professional development to the supervisors on how to use this tool as a learning tool, things of that nature. So again, your solution needs to be matching your problem. So you want to make sure that you have that. So those are the 2 things that should have happened already, but I know that some of you are still working on different parts of that. So try to get that in as good of a shape as possible before you move on to the next piece. So now this week's project is about assessment. So the idea here is that I'm looking for you to identify what kind of evidence would you need in order to show whether or not your innovative solution worked. So let's just assume that you were successful getting a school district to implement your new innovative practice. So they're now using this new teacher evaluation tool, or they're now implementing this new way to communicate with parents, or whatever your area of focus is. How will you know if that was an effective innovation, like if that practice is actually working? So just pretend you're going to a board meeting and you're presenting, wow, we did this great new thing at the school and we think it worked and here's why. What would you say? Like, what kind of information would you be presenting to the board to show that, yes, it did in fact work? So here's another example. If you were saying that maybe the current reading program at the school isn't working, well, then you have a new innovative reading program. Maybe it has a stronger emphasis on phonics or something. How will you know that that's working? Well, you're going to need both direct and indirect evidence of that. Direct evidence is going to be like more, it's usually like more tied to, like it's not subjective, it's more objective. So if it's a reading example, the reading skills of the students would actually be showing. If the reading skills are improving through some kind of reading assessment, then that would be direct evidence. Another piece of direct evidence, another example would be, let's say we'll go back to the example where we talked about teacher evaluations. If your focus is on doing professional development to increase the focus on learning, and you want to know if teachers are actually taking action based on their assessment feedback from their supervisor, well, then you can look at either by going back into the classroom to do a direct observation again, or maybe directly looking at some of their lesson plans to see if they integrated components of what was talked about into their mix. So direct is more objective data. And then I want you to also identify some indirect data. So, sticking with the teacher evaluation example, you could ask teachers, are you finding this feedback to be helpful to you? Do you feel like you are using it in your classroom? That's, a good example of the indirect method. It could be student questions, student surveys, faculty surveys, focus groups, to kind of get more of their opinion or their thoughts on it. And it doesn't have to only be at the student or faculty level. It might also be at the administrative level. So it depends on what the nature of your innovative practice is, what would make the most sense. So I want you to this is really important to keep it in context. So at every stage along the way, especially for this one, I want you to, at the top of whether it's a slide, whether it's a one-page document, it doesn't matter to me the format for this week's material, but each person in their group has their own innovative practice. So there's two parts of the module assignment. The first part is to work collaboratively together to create a document or visual representation of what backwards design is. And then this week what we're doing is we're focusing on step 2 of backward design. So step 1 is the outcome, what are you trying to accomplish? And then step 2 is the assessment, how will you know if you accomplished it? So I want you to clearly state the problem and also clearly describe your innovative practice. So keep it in context. So the problem is, here's my solution, and then the most important part of this week's module is, what is your assessment strategy going to be? And as I mentioned in the previous announcement, that I also want you to share some specific questions. So instead of just saying we're going to do a student survey, well, what kinds of questions would you ask on that student survey? So really important to keep that in context. So if you didn't do that, please go back and just add that, because I think it'll add clarity and keep you focused, and also help me when I'm grading it to be clear about what you're specifically targeting. So here's an example. I chose this example because no one's using it, so I feel like it's good to do something that's a little different from what others are doing. I think I talked about this earlier on in the semester, that this is an innovative practice that we did at the state level. So the problem was that students were graduating, I wrote college, that should be high school. So students are graduating high school not academically prepared for college, which means they need to take remedial coursework. Once they find out they need to take remedial coursework, some of them choose not to even go to college. So it's actually impacting the enrollment rates, because many students placing into remedial coursework just never ever land in a college campus. So the innovative solution is to introduce the co-requisite model, which colleges have been using at the college level, but has, to our knowledge, never really used at the high school level. So what this would allow is high school seniors who may not normally be able to take a English or math college level class, they would now be able to take that class with support. So it's not like you're just thrown into a class that you're not ready for, but you're actually wrapped in a supportive environment. In many cases, that's a support class. So that's the innovative solution. Now, in terms of assessment, there are several different kinds of assessment we could use. The direct assessment is the number of students who don't need remediation anymore, right? So as a result of this, hopefully we have fewer students who need to take remediation, okay? So by passing the English class, that kind of exempts them from having to take developmental or remedial classes. And then we could also look for the actual number of students who are attending college to see if that goes up. In terms of indirect evidence, there's the possibility of doing some student survey. So how likely is it for you to go to college? Because even if they don't enroll immediately, maybe they will enroll a year or two down the road. And how confident are you that you're going to be successful? So are they feeling like the academic skills that they learned in this course have prepared them well for the next academic challenge in college? So I hope that this it gives you a sense. It doesn't have to be overly detailed, but I would like to hear a couple of the questions. Ideally what I'm asking you to do is to kind of think through, how will I know if this has actually worked? So if anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I am accessible by email or phone. I'm happy to help out in any way that I can. At the more work you do now, the less work you'll have to do on the final project, because all of this kind of feeds into it. So I would remind you to also go into that final module and look at the rubric that I indicated, because it provides all the specifics about what you need to do on this project. All right, take care and good luck with it. Can't wait to read it.